Live from the Ken and Valerie Baker studio at WHYY, this is Studio 2.
On Tuesday, January 27th, welcome, friends, on into the program. I'm Cherry Gregg.
And I'm Avi Wolfman Aaron. No chit-chat today, right into the show, because today on Studio 2, we are launching The Big Fix, our brand new monthly series exploring solutions to some of the country's toughest problems. Each month, we'll tackle a different challenge: our healthcare system, climate change, political polarization, and more.
And for our first episode, we're turning to one of the most important foundations of our society and democracy: education, specifically K-12 schools, something many say is in crisis, made worse by the pandemic.
There is a widening achievement gap, deep inequities in school funding, slipping test scores, and a student mental health emergency, just to name a few. But beyond those issues, we want to ask the bigger question. If we had a chance to rebuild our education system from the ground up, what should it look like? How can we adapt to prepare students for the future?
Yes, and to help answer that, we've invited a panel of education experts to reimagine how school works in this country and to present some concrete, ambitious ideas for change. In the studio, we have Dr. William Hayes, CEO of Boys Latin, a 6th to 12th grade charter preparatory school in Philadelphia. We also have Donna Cooper, Executive Director of Children First, a nonprofit child advocacy and policy organization. She worked on state education policy for Governor Ed Rendell's administration. And last but not least, joining us by Zoom, we have Rebecca Winthrop, Director of the Center for Universal Education at the Brookings Institution and the author of The Disengaged Teen, Helping Kids Learn Better, Feel Better, and Live Better. Welcome to the program, everybody.
And we want your solutions as well, everybody. What would be your big fix to K-12 education? How would you make schools work better? Step up to the plate. Call 888-477-9499. Email studio2@whyy.org. If you're on YouTube or Facebook, how you doing? Drop a comment in the chat.
And so, Donna Cooper, we're going to start with you. One of your big ideas says that 12th grade is a wasted grade. We want you to lay out your big fix.
Sure. I mean, look, when you're in 12th grade, and we all remember being in 12th grade.
Sure. Barely, Donna, but yeah.
Barely, yes. It was a wasted
barely
year.
go to class. Yes.
Because if you're accepted for college in the fall, the entire purpose of the year is gone. And if you're not going to college, you're kind of disengaged. You're like, what am I doing here? So it all comes down to sort of, what do we think is the end point of school? We mostly think it's about a diploma. And I think if we were to change the definition of what the end of school meant, which is the end of school means you're either halfway through college or you're on your pathway into a career, we wouldn't end at the point of a diploma. We would structure school to give a smooth on-ramp for students to be getting 2 years of college before they graduate high school. So we have associate's degrees for the college-bound kids. And for kids who want to go right into work experience that gets them way beyond an entry-level job by the time they graduate.
So in 12th grade, you're still working towards something.
You're still working towards something, so you're still like a kid that's supervised by an entity, but the entity isn't putting you in classroom module rooms where you're listening to a teacher in the front and wondering, what the hell does this have to do with my future? You're working on your future. And I have to say, Avi, this comes a little bit from my own experience, because when I was in high school, my 12th grade year was a work year. It was the year of the bicentennial in Philadelphia. Ironically, we're having another big year.
Yeah.
I was down here in this building in Independence Hall. This was a bicentennial center, and I was a tour guide for the bicentennial most of my 12th grade year. And so I was social studies geek, so that's what made me want to do that. But the idea is that any teacher will tell you 12th grade's hard to make work. And also, researchers know diplomas have very little meaning, because are you achieving the levels of academic skills needed to do what you want after high school is not denoted by a diploma. Now, if we're going to get rid of the academic instruction, the traditional in 11th and 12th grade, it gives us the wherewithal to take those resources and invest them in 4 and 5-year-old pre-K. So start school when you're 4, get 2 years of...
You go into the more traditional education system when you're 4 years old.
And you start in
so
those
we're basically
years.
shifting the education system down a year.
Except for you're still keeping the K-12 system for the purpose of supervising and engaging young people through 12th grade, because there is no other way to make that happen right now.
Yeah.
But you are shifting it down, or you could say you're lengthening it.
So why would we shift it down? So why are we going down a year at the younger levels?
We're having so much trouble teaching kids to read, right?
Yeah.
And we saw that the science of reading work that's happening is sort of more aligned with research, kids learning through phonetics. That should help. But look, kids learn to read at different levels.
Yeah.
By the time, they don't all get there exactly by 3rd grade. But what we know is kids who had good pre-K for 2 years before school are significantly more likely to do well in 3rd grade reading. And that's sort of the benchmark. You got to do that, or you can't do anything after that.
It unlocks
It's too hard.
everything else.
Front load education
Front
and
load
give
and
people
the
more
foundation
direction for that
gives
12th grade year.
Exactly. So it gives them the foundation to build those reading skills, those cognitive development skills, so they're on a pathway to success. So we've just started too late, and we go in a traditional way too long.
Yeah. And the UK kind of has this similar
And
program.
Germany,
Yeah.
and Japan, and China. China already has 2 years of pre-K for their kids, right? So they're not screwing around. And in China, you're also either going college or apprenticeship in high school.
So here would be my concern, right?
Yeah.
Is the tracking system, right? And being sort of calling it too early for a kid, being like, yeah, we're going to put you on the apprenticeship path by 10th, 11th grade, and kid B, you're going to be on the academic path.
Great point.
So how would you get around that? I'll ask that to you, Will, because you're working with 12th graders all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, so one, I'm a Head Start baby, so I 100% stand behind the push for pre-K. I think, one, when you ask a question like that, it assumes that one track is better than the other. And that's just a product of our system where we've said some folks deserve this kind of all this, the frills and fluff, and we don't necessarily build up all the tracks. But I think you can create a path that is equally engaging for a student, meets them where they are, marries their passions and their interests, both in an apprenticeship route as well as in a college going route. And so I think we've got to do the work of investing in those particular pathways so that nobody feels like they are being pushed out or they're getting less than.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And Rebecca, you have any thoughts to bring you in the conversation on this?
Well, as a mother of a 12th grader, at
Oh,
the
wow.
moment, 12th grade boy, I can attest to Donna that she is spot on. They do not like to go to school. We just had our school have a meeting with all the parents, say your kids really need to come to school and go to class. So I actually think there's a number of great benefits of doing what Donna says, which has to do with keeping kids engaged and keeping their love of learning and sort of shifting the purpose of school. So I love the idea. I don't know if we could transfer all the resources into early childhood, because I actually think to do well, many other systems or pilot programs around the world have played with this sort of last 2 years of high school. And to do it well, you need a system of mentors, you need job placement.
So there's some investment that needs to happen there. And Donna, you're shaking your head.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's a structure that has to remain for 11th and 12th grade to guide students and support them and inspire them.
And maybe some students may not be ready to go either of the two paths. Yeah.
And look, in Delaware, 90% of the kids are graduating right now with a credential, either an associate's degree or an industry credential. All of them are graduating with a college-ready transcript. So as they go on in life, they can make different decisions. So tracking doesn't have to be, as William points out, it's sort of an artificial stigma that
we have to destigmatize in some ways.
And ensure the kids get choices. Germany had to go through that when they changed their dual enrollment system where you could go to work or high school. They had to change it so every kid had options afterwards.
So there's going to be,
You're not lowering the floor. Essentially, you're saying we're going to build a strong foundation for everyone. And once we feel like you've met that strong foundation, now you're free to explore. You're free to kind of go through the passion journey of figuring out what do I like, what I don't like. And so I think creating those experiences for students, particularly in 11th and 12th grade, allow them to make much more informed decisions when they actually do get to college.
By the way, my first job was in 12th grade, working at a television station, logging tapes. So I did that in 12th grade. Go ahead.
Well, I love it. That's a great example of like how it can expose you to interests and things you're curious about, and can grow exactly what my fellow panelists just said, your curiosity. But I wanted to make the point that in an age of generative AI, I think we're going to see in the next 5 years at least some shifting of what is seen as viable, good, or worthwhile jobs as our cognitive jobs, entry-level jobs, get automated. And things like teaching, nursing, caregiving, interviews, what you're doing right here will be much harder to automate with generative AI. Anything with interpersonal, hands-on, embodied. So I totally take the point that we have to be very cognizant about our terrible history of tracking, which is true in this country. But the sands in the maybe shifting a little bit around what's valued.
And so now we want to hear from a student as we go to big idea, the next big idea. Here we have Saul, a Saul High School student, Cheyenne, discussing the idea of tiering classes by difficulty level, giving students more choice in how challenging their coursework is. Take a listen to this.
If people want to drop out of class and take like a kind of either harder class or easier class, they could try that. Or there could also be like a class that's like in the middle and able for like people that aren't like, they don't want it to be too easy or they don't want it to be too hard.
All right, so let's go to you now, Will Hayes. Your first big idea for how to help fix K-12 education.
Yeah, I think my big idea really goes back to the very foundation of the system that we're in right now, which is this idea of credits and Carnegie units. And so as a high school leader, you know, you have a certain number of credits that you need to get for graduation. You take 4 years of English, 4 years of math, science, and history. And we don't ever evaluate where that actually came from. And so when we look at the Carnegie Foundation, they created just a random system that said a student who goes into college needs to meet this number of credits. And we never evaluated whether history should be a full semester course or whether some subjects require longer time or whether we can accelerate learning by having kids test out of certain subjects. And so when we look at that, I believe that we are slowing kids' progress down by locking them into a system they may very well advance out of, right? And so I think to the student's point, if I have already met the mark for this class. If you've written one 5-paragraph essay, you've done enough, right? And I want to go do something different or dive deeper into a particular topic, I should be able to do so.
But I can't do that now because I've basically got to complete my seat time requirement for that class.
And someone somewhere decided it takes 120 credit hours to prove proficiency in this particular area, whether you're going to major in or not, whether it's a career interest or not. And so we hold kids back because we are saying, you just need to be in here this number of minutes.
So what would you do?
I would blow it all the way up. I would allow
absolutely TNT, bam. And so what would you build?
One, I would build a system that allows us to. We already have the standards to say kids need to be able to do this particular thing in this particular subject. Once a kid says, "I want to sit for this assessment that demonstrates my proficiency in this area, so I can spend my time somewhere else that I'm more passionate about," I would allow students to take that exam at the beginning of the semester and then say, "Hey, you're good to go. Go figure out
which
what
is
we're
a great
do
incentive
here,
for that
to
student
study
too.
And do your work.
Absolutely. And it's also a great incentive to maximize the learning and not just passing a course. Right now our kids are chasing grades, A's, B's, and C's, and not necessarily trying to chase the love of learning and the information they gain from that. And so it may not be just I'm reading and writing, but now I'm reading and writing about a particular subject I'm passionate about. I'm reading and writing about a particular experience or era that really pushes my learning. And so we get kids to really focus on loving learning and continuing to learn and not just meeting the mark.
So in a way, you kind of reward proficiency. So you say, if you really master this, you can move on and do the things you really want to do.
Absolutely. And I also leave room for multiple proficiencies, right? And so there are some students who are whiz kids at math, get it naturally and could move on and do something else. And so you leave room for kids to say, I know how to do this thing, now I want to know how to do something else.
Here will be my biggest question for you, the principal. How do you staff this? Because one of the advantages, and I don't know if you could really call it an advantage of that Carnegie unit system, right, is that you could say, look, I know I need about this many social studies teachers. I know I need about this many Spanish teachers. It's not necessarily, there's not huge fluidity year to year based on how much the students know. And it does help you turn the gears of the system in some way. Have you thought about how you would do the teacher side of this?
Absolutely. I think you staff it with the world around you. I think we've kind of gotten boxed in. The only experts in a particular content are certified teachers. We have experts who work in the field. I could learn a great deal more just by shadowing an individual as an apprentice, right? I could leverage the Zoom sphere that we have where I could take a class in another country. I could log into different spaces and different contexts over time to really push my learning. and when I think about schools beyond just the four walls in the classroom.
And I do wonder, how do you group kids? Because part of school is socialization, right? And we saw what happens when kids were not socialized because they were so isolated during the pandemic. How do you deal with that and group kids together with like-minded? Because you do learn from each other as well.
Yeah, again, I think it goes about tearing down the walls of what we see as this standalone brick and mortar school. There may only be 3 or 4 kids who are interested in this particular subject area, but there are many kids across the country. What does it mean to have them all log into the Zoom at the same time and talk about what interests them? I feel a sense of belonging to a community that has a shared interest. It's the same adult principle we operate by now. We find our like-minded individuals, we find the people who work in a similar field, and we build and grow and develop along that same way.
Yeah. I want to bring in a caller. This is Donald from South Philly, who's got a big fix idea. Hey, Donald, you're on Studio 2. What's your idea for us?
My idea really in terms of the whole issue with K-12, I do believe a lot of the trades they took out of schools, whether that be plumbing, electrical, HVAC, and those are some of the things I believe that if you are not someone who is interested in going to college, those are some of the hands-on things that I think that would make high school, I think, better, as opposed to looking at it from 11th grade or 12th grade year saying, you know what, I don't have anything that I can look forward to after, high school. I'm not going to college, and almost like the buck just stops right there, right? So I think that when you have those trades, it kind of gives kids those options. And I do believe that it helps with morale in school in terms of, okay, they're not just focusing on the kids who are listening and working for college. But for me, I know that I'm looking at something that's going to actually be around for years, plumbing, carpentry, electrical work. People are always going to need somewhere to live at.
Yeah.
So you're actually having things that you can do tangibly that can make me some money.
Real life,
or start my own business, career-wise, and things like that. Because I also believe that when you're doing these trades, math, if you're not good at math, when you're applying these real-world math
skills,
scenarios, whether that be in trying to measure the distance from a house to a roof, or you're actually saying, wow, this is where this math does
matters.
Make sense.
Well, thank you so much, Donald from South Philly. And I gotta say,
thought out.
Donald hit on points that all 3 of you have brought up so far. So perfect call as we start to transition into a break here. To set up what we're going to talk about on the other side of this break, I want to play another clip. These are from young learners with WHYY's Media Labs program. This is Ava, Armio, and Peyton.
I think a lot of math can seem far out there, whereas fractions, when they're used in terms of baking, can seem more rooted in reality and in things that you'll need to know.
Making the activities more hands-on for some students who struggle on learning things could learn better because it's hands-on.
I would improve not learning the same thing over and over again. Like, I don't want to learn the same thing that I learned in 6th grade and 7th grade.
Okay, we're definitely hitting on some common
They are
themes
hitting
here.
it, yes.
So we want to hear what your big fix for K-12 education would be. Call 888-477-9499. More ideas coming after the break. Don't go anywhere. This is Studio 2. and welcome back to Studio 2 on WHYY. I'm Avi Wolfman-Arrington.
And I'm Cherry Gregg. This is the debut of our monthly series, The Big Fix, where we explore big solutions to some of the country's most pressing problems. Today, we're taking on K-12 education and asking, how should we reinvent education to meet this moment and to best prepare kids for the future?
We gave each of our guests a homework assignment. Maybe one of the ideas could be get rid of homework. I've heard that one before, but anyways, they had to bring in 2 big ideas for fixing our schools, and we've been discussing their solutions. Let me reintroduce our guest. Dr. William Hayes is the CEO of Boys Latin, a 6th through 12th grade charter preparatory school in Philadelphia. Donna Cooper is Executive Director of Children First, a nonprofit child advocacy and policy organization. And Rebecca Winthrop is the Director of the Center for Universal Education at the Brookings Institution.
And we want to hear you, of course, our listeners. We want to get your ideas. What would be your big fix to K-12 education, and how would you make schools work better? The number to call is 888-477-9499. The email is studio2@whyy.org. And if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, keep those comments coming in the live chat.
All right, Rebecca, we would love to hear your first big idea for reinventing K-12 education. Go ahead.
So one of the things that I think is potentially quite transformative is trying to measure and assess student agency right alongside academic competence. We know we need to really, in the early years, make sure kids get strong reading skills and strong numeracy skills. But we're finding that kids who are really, really good at school go off to college, usually really well-ranked colleges, and often fall apart. I found this in my research with my co-author Jenny Anderson for our book, The Disengaged Teen. And part of it is because they're becoming really good at following instructions and being told what to do and doing it exactly right. And that's not going to prepare kids for the life that they are inheriting at the moment, if it ever did. And so this idea of student agency is kids getting to practice the skill of identifying a meaningful goal and developing the skills on how to get there, which includes asking for help. It includes resilience. But to identify a meaningful goal, they have to think about what they're interested in. So we heard a great clip right before the break of a young student saying, I'd love to learn fractions through baking. That is a great, small, tangible way you can expand students' ability to practice agency. So you say, how do you want to learn your fractions? Come to me with 3 ideas, and teachers can let them do that. One of the things that I've been astounded by in our research was we found that adolescents in the US are subject to 2 times more rules than incarcerated felons. So we can't expect them to grow up and love learning and be able to really navigate their way in a very uncertain future if we don't give them a chance to practice this idea of making decisions and defining goals and getting help to figure out how to get there.
And so what structural supports would you put in place to sort of help people learn how to make choices? Because I know a lot of young people that have a hard time making positive, good choices for themselves. So how would you sort of set them up to make the best choices?
Yes, and that is often the natural, normal response when we talk about this of like, well, I'm not going to let my teenager do whatever they want or my 7-year-old. And that's not what the research says. You don't sort of give the kids the keys to the kingdom, but there's a lot of things you can do in the classroom. Lots of research shows if you do autonomy supportive teaching methods, which is here's 4 choices on homework, pick one, or give me feedback, or literally asking kids questions about what they're curious about before you start the lesson. So you say, hey, we're going to talk about solar systems today. Is anybody curious about anything? It's a 2-minute intervention. It makes a really big difference because all of a sudden kids aren't just sitting there passively receiving, but they're leaning forward and getting interested. Those are things that teachers can do tomorrow without any school-wide system change. I love the things that William was talking about. Anything that helps kids learn knowledge and then go do something with that knowledge. So, we can learn math, we can learn physics, and you can practice plumbing and engineering and electricity by building a small house. There's several schools who have this small house program in high school where they literally build a small house and they're gaining all the knowledge they need to pass their exams. So they have the option to go on and be a physics major if they want to, but they're also gaining practical hands-on skills. And it's very motivating to kids, and they have to they have to have a little freedom and make some, judgments about how to go about this. So rather than here's what you learn, take the test, turn in this homework, this is exactly what you have to do. There's a lot of ways we can help kids practice in safe, structured environments to build that agency.
Will, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Because I'm thinking this sounds amazing. I would be a little worried as a teacher how to integrate all of this while maintaining sort of like classroom management standards and just making sure, generally we've got this thing under control. How do you give students more agency while also, being able to keep the wheels moving through an hour and a half class?
Yeah, but I think great educators will agree that the best tool for classroom management is an engaging lesson.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily have all of the issues that you would have if students are invested in the lesson. I think we do a terrible job of contextualizing the education that we are trying to administer to students. And so I think about something as simple as a bird tree a tree house that I may be creating. I'm much more intentional about the measurements, the details, the angles, all the steps that are important if I know there's an outcome on the other side of this. If I'm going to actually inhabit this particular treehouse, if I'm going to sit in it, if my life could be threatened if I don't measure it right, I could be more invested. And so I think we have to do a better job of just contextualizing and applying the actual learning that we're trying to see kids go through.
Donna, I'm curious, this idea that the problem that Rebecca laid out there, which is that students, even some of the best students, what they've essentially learned to do through school is follow instruction instead of sort of take control of their own lives and their own interests. Do you think that is a prevalent problem in schools? And do you think there would be a way to improve upon that?
Well, look, I agree that we can change instruction to make kids active learners.
Yeah.
I think agency doesn't only come from school. I think agency comes from families, and agency comes from communities. And so I think Rebecca talks about instructional practices that should be norms. I think agency isn't just a function of how we teach our kids in school. And if their families and their communities are telling them, don't think, don't do, then they're rebelling and they're making different decisions. I don't think we solve agency just in school. But I think it gets back to how do we prepare teachers and what do we expect of teachers? And I just think, I have another idea.
It's coming up.
And it's coming up.
It goes right into that.
Yeah.
So I'll hold that.
You'll hold it until after this call. This is Bill from West Mount Airy who wants to give an idea. Hey, Bill, you're on Studio 2. What's your question or comment?
Yeah, hi. So I went to school from kindergarten through a PhD, and I loved every year of it. But I know not everybody is like that, and I think one reason is because it's not necessarily linked to real life, as you're discussing. So the most interesting thing that happened to me was that we had a week left at the end of curriculum in ninth grade history, and the teacher said, next week we're going to do something really interesting. And we did. For 5 periods, 5 hours that week, we learned how to do our income taxes, ninth graders, single, married with children.
Could you teach me?
Yeah. And you can use that,
everything. And that was very practical. And I think that many things could lend themselves to that. And when students say, well, why am I learning this? Another reason is it teaches you how to think. You learn how to think. And so I think that abstract things have their value, but practical things also have value.
Thank you. That's Bill from West Mount Airy. By the way, David on YouTube says, we also need basic finance class for everyone to teach kids about credit, mortgages, interest rates, and the power of savings over the long term. Some practical things to learn.
Judah has the exact same comment, by the way, financial literacy.
And so let's hear from another student. We have Saul, a Saul High School student, Cheyenne, who's talking about hiring teachers who are good at and interested in the subjects that they are teaching. Here's what she had to say.
Having teachers that actually know what they're doing in most of their classes, because there are some teachers that will be like, they'll teach one subject, but they're better at a different subject than they are at the one that they're teaching.
And so, Donna Cooper, we're going back to you because I know your big idea is around teacher training. So lay it all out.
Yeah, I think it really blends from what Rebecca said as well. But, we currently have a college system that has schools of higher ed. That's what they're called. And they train teachers. And they have their own little environment that they work in, and then they send these people off and they enter schools. And then they get to the school, and everything they learned in the college has very little relevance to what they do in their school, because we don't actually have a system that connects colleges to schools. I'll remember when I was at the state, I brought together the 10 largest teacher training programs in the state and the 10 lowest performing school districts. And I asked the HR people from both places, have you ever met each other? And the answer was no. So we have a big disconnect in the pipeline of teacher training being connected to what they need to do once they become teachers.
What's the disconnect? So what are they learning when they're getting their certification versus what do they need to know?
So they're learning, okay, so when you're going to school to get a teacher, you learn some pedagogy. That's a word we don't use a lot here, but how to teach.
Yep.
Very little pedagogy. This country has a very weak attachment to teaching people how to teach. And then if you're going to be a pre-K to 4 teacher, you're going to learn what is the content of your English, math, science in those grades. You're going to learn maybe some classroom management. Some schools don't teach that. You're going to learn theory of education, like why boys learn differently than girls. Lots of theoretical stuff.
But what you don't learn is what?
You don't learn how to apply to be a teacher. Not apply for a job, but how to instruct a class and how to instruct an interesting class. And so
why would that be? Why wouldn't they be teaching that in these schools of ed?
That would be a whole show.
Yeah.
But I think it starts from the fact that the faculty are long away from classrooms, and they got their PhDs in areas of research for which they are teaching that are important but aren't about teaching in my classroom. And also because there's no connection. If I train my teachers at Donna Cooper University and they all go to Boys Latin and do a lousy job, it doesn't affect me at Donna Cooper University.
There's no accountability for you.
So how would you fix this?
I believe, first of all, our schools of education should have very high standards for the share of students who take teacher assessments and pass them the first time around. So we know that the input into whatever the state has decided a teacher must know how to do is congruent. We have some troubling pass rates among those. Then I think if my kids go to Boys Latin, my teachers go to Boys Latin, and Boys Latin does not evaluate them positively in the first 5 years, I should have some accountability for that at the higher ed system. I should be connected to a system where my product is being evaluated in the market and it affects me if it doesn't succeed in the market. That's easier said than done because schools of higher ed are getting students who are not the top students in their universities. And we want them to teach agency and we want them to have individual learning plans. So we have, given the complexity of what we want of teachers, we have to make sure that the market is also attracting that kind of person.
And that's what I was thinking about. I said that, the teaching and education has a big PR problem because a lot of the best and brightest don't necessarily want to become teachers, whereas 30, 40 years ago, that's who were the teachers.
Exactly.
My grandmother was a teacher,
Exactly.
right? So how do you sort of shift that and make the colleges of education sort of bring in these folks so that you're getting better product at a Boys Latin?
Well, when your grandmother was a teacher, she couldn't get a job as a woman anywhere else.
That is true.
So now women can get jobs everywhere. And so what we need to do is a different market signal. We can't use discrimination as a market signal. We have to use pay.
Yeah.
And so
and that's what Aaliyah says. We have to pay teachers more.
If we pay teachers concomitant with a chemical engineer, civil engineer, lawyer, doctor, now we have a level playing field for the schools of ed to compete and bring in great people. We can elevate our expectations. And then we need to hold the schools of education accountable for the product they're delivering and get them much closer to the schools for whom they're delivering the teachers for.
Yeah.
Will, your thoughts on just, obviously you work with lots of young teachers. You're getting, I assume, some straight from, their undergraduate or postgraduate education. I'm curious what you see.
Yep. So I will say I think we do have a marketing issue. I personally believe teaching is one of the greatest professions. I'm so happy I got into it. And I didn't go to school for it. And so it took someone seeing something in me and saying, I want you to become a teacher. And so I think we can also just do a better job of tapping the best and brightest and saying you are wanted here, right? And so I think the system has to also go seek out the high recruits, just like other industries are doing. I also think about when we look at teacher preparation, there's so many things we leave off of the table. Prior to going into teaching, I was actually a licensed clinical social work major. So I was going in to become a social work. And the most powerful course that I still use today is counseling, and to look at group counseling and look at individual counseling. We don't necessarily evaluate or truly appreciate how much of this is a human-to-human interaction. And so you can know all of the content, all of the routines, procedures, but you don't connect to kids. And so we also need to do a better job of preparing future teachers to better connect to humans when they get into those classrooms.
I love that. I want to bring in a caller. We have Patrick from Philly on the line, who I think could add to this part of the conversation. Patrick, you're on Studio 2. What is your idea for a big fix?
Well, I'm actually talking about one of your guests' ideas about the disconnect between teacher preparation and lived experience of teachers in schools. I am a teacher educator. I'm the assistant dean of teacher education at the University of Pennsylvania. And our students and all of the students in all of the programs in this city that I work with are in classrooms applying what they learn every single day. My students start the year in their K-12 classrooms with their mentors, and they end the year that way. And it was pretty offensive to hear the blanket statement about this huge disconnect.
So what would you improve if you had a magic wand, Patrick, about teacher preparation and education?
I think the next point that was made about the collective accountability between schools of education and the schools themselves, I think that is an idea that we need to pursue. And it's really important, and it's really difficult to do.
Yeah.
That is not nobody's waving a magic wand for that one.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you so much, Patrick. So some agreement and some disagreement. I really appreciated that call. We do have to move to a break. We're going to hold that. We're going to hold that because we do have to move to a break. I will read really quickly James's comment, who says, while we were visiting family over the holidays, one of the older people in the group mentioned having a bowling class. As a millennial, we spent large portions of our schooling being taught to take various standardized tests. I feel the constant need to find the one right answer hurts our generation's mental health and ability to take initiative in the workforce. James, responding to a prior part of the conversation. Nice comment, James. Thanks so much. 888-477-9499 is the number to call. We'll be right back on Studio 2. Don't go anywhere.
And welcome back to Studio 2 here on WHYY. I'm Cherry Gregg.
I'm Avi Wolfman-Aaron. Today we're exploring the problems facing our K-12 education system and how to solve them. It's the first episode of our new monthly series we're calling The Big Fix, which wrestles with some of our most intractable issues and debates possible solutions.
And let me reintroduce our guests. We have Dr. William Hayes, CEO of Boys Latin, a 6 to 12 grade charter preparatory school here in Philadelphia. We also have Donna Cooper, Executive Director of Children First, a nonprofit child advocacy and policy organization. And last but not least, we have Rebecca Winthrop, Director of the Center for Universal Education at the Brookings Institution.
Of course, you can submit your big ideas. Give us a call, 888-477-9499. You can email studio2@whyy.org, YouTube, Facebook. Drop a comment in the chat. I want to get to Will's next big idea, but real quick, Rebecca, I think you wanted to chime in on the debate we were having on the other side of the break.
The debate we were having before the break was around teachers and how do we attract them, retain them, train them better. And Donna put out a really important point around pay. And I just wanted to say, I think we also need to think very deeply about respect for teachers, because teachers often feel squished in the middle between sort of standards and accountability from the system, and then also from parents, squished from below of really demanding parents who are often feeling like they went to school, so therefore they know how to teach, and rock up and you know, are telling them what to do. And so I think pay is a piece of it, but I also think a lot of teachers went into teaching because they love kids, and then the job itself is not that fun because of both those angles. So we need to think about the conditions of work as well.
All right, we're starting to get a little short on time, so I want to get to Will's second big idea. Go ahead, Will.
Yep, the second big idea is really just back to my earlier point around imagining schools without walls. And so it's a global immersion and externship to really think about the benefits of students traveling outside of their home communities. I think about the first trip I took abroad, and I'm one of those people who doesn't like to go see the sights. I just like to sit and just watch people. I like to go to the grocery store. And so allowing kids a global immersion in which they can explore the communities, the different people, the governments, the systems, the education, and really take away that learning and pique their curiosity that they can build on when they get back.
Well, logistics of this, right? I mean,
That's
how do you pull something like this off in a way where you make sure they're definitely getting something valuable out of it, and of course, you know, there's liabilities when kids start traveling around.
Yeah, we take trips. So every other year we do take a trip abroad. I had the pleasure of taking 10 students to Rome last year, and so the same process we go through to travel abroad. You get your passport, you book the trip, you book your stay, and you come on back home.
And so my follow-up to you, Will, would be like, what about, because it costs money, right? And the kids who I think would benefit the most are usually the ones who don't have access to these types of trips. So how would you deal with that part of it?
So I think there's an opportunity to divert money. So we spend a lot of money in certain areas around things like remediation and control of students and culture and climate, when we could just divert the money to field trips, right? We could also get corporations and industries and nonprofits to invest in students. I think we could take a collective approach and say, if all 5 of us can sponsor this one kid to take this trip, then we can actually certainly make it happen. I think before we try to look to all the barriers to, I guess, growing this to scale, we can at least take the chance to invest it in a small few, or at least those students who wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity. I think about when we become adults, all the ways in which we say, you want to go here, you want to see the world, we want to talk to these people, and the ways in which we grow from that, we delay that for students in a way that I think inhibits their opportunity to grow and learn.
Yeah.
I want to bring in another caller. This is Yassine from Philadelphia, who's on line 2. I'm curious for your question or your insight or your big idea. Go ahead.
Hello, greetings to you and to your guests. I'm Yassine. I'm a doctoral candidate at the School of Education at Drexel, and this topic is amazing. Keep it up, guys. So as we think about the future, and we know that, you know, what concerns me specifically is that for generations, we taught kids skills and competencies that solve yesterday problems, like, for example, memorizing facts, following procedures, and mastering trade that would last a career. That model worked when change was slow. So now with AI and everything involved and the amount of content that these students are exposed to, we are preparing students for jobs that do not exist, I think, using technologies that haven't been invented to solve problems that we can't even anticipate. So the shelf life, in my opinion, for any specific skill is shrinking rapidly. So my question to you and to the guests is, when the content we teach kids risk being obsolete before students even graduate, shouldn't we be fundamentally rethinking what education is for? Shouldn't we prioritize teaching kids how to learn, how to adapt, how to stay mentally resilient through a lifetime of reinvention, rather than just adding more content to the curriculum?
Yeah.
Interesting call from Yassine. And right, this gets to a core issue. When the pace of change is really, really fast, how do you teach kids? And I actually want to now get to Rebecca Winthrop's second bold idea, because I think it does touch on this. So first of all, am I right about that, Rebecca? And if you could segue then into your second big idea.
Yes, thank you for bringing up AI. I'm a little bit obsessed about it. We just finished a really big study over the last year I led the Brookings Global Task Force on AI in Education, looking at students, generative AI risks and benefits. And really what we found is that AI can be used really well to help students, but there's a lot of risks. And 1 in 3 kids in the US today say they prefer talking to an AI friend more or equally than a actual person. We also see there's a lot of basically cognitive stunting, which comes from AI overuse, where kids are actually not doing the thinking and learning processes they need to be doing to actually learn and grow because they're using AI too much. So I really do think we need to lean in and say during the, hours, whatever it is, 8 hours a day, 7 hours a day, kids are with us in school 40 weeks a year, that we give them an experience that is the most humanist possible. My colleague John Vallant and I at Brookings are talking about the most humanist possible experience, because we know we can control it. It's harder to control what's happening outside of school. And we know kids will have to go through the deep processing experience to learn. So reading books, writing by hand, perhaps. We should supplement, of course, to the last caller's point, and start really teaching, not just throw a bunch of devices at kids and say, here's how to prompt engineer your AI chatbot, but let's start teaching, how computers work, how the online world works, where data comes from, what's happening, how you design AI to be in service of your goals. So I think that can be on the margins, but really protecting the human to human, effortful thinking, interaction is, I think, going to be essential to help our kids learn and grow in the future.
So let me see if I'm understanding this correctly, Rebecca. One way that you're proposing we keep up with this rapid pace of change is actually kind of de-techifying the school day itself, which seems counterintuitive. So I want you to convince me and the rest of the audience that students will be able to keep up with the pace of change in this very tech-heavy world, despite being in classrooms that have very little tech.
Right. So there's a couple of things. One, actually just 2 major points. One, everybody agrees that some of the most fundamental skills young people will need to succeed in an age of AI are thinking skills, critical thinking skills, judgment, and interpersonal interaction. Like, if all you can do in your job is, if your job is, you can do it locked in a computer, locked in a closet on a computer, you're probably not going to have a job anymore. So we need kids to be able to work, be able to interact, and to develop thinking skills. Kids have to spend time thinking. And when they use generative AI, they do not actually do the deep, effortful thinking. So we need to make sure that they are protected and actually pushed to do actually effortful thinking. That doesn't mean they're not exposed to AI. So there's some great examples of schools using AI for kids, teaching them machine learning in their science project. They're measuring sea level. This is a school in Hawaii, and trying to do a science project to see about, sea level rise in their communities. And then they take the data, they go back in and they learn how to use Gen AI to sort of make models. That's a great way to use generative AI, but not sticking kids in front of screens with chatbots with lots of devices. We already know from the global literature that actually hurts kids' learning. Kids already spend 7 hours a day on screens, and we know that the farther away your phone is from you, the better the grades are. If you keep it next to you, when you study at a table, your grades are going to be worse than if your phone is in an entirely different room.
And so I want to give our 2 education experts a chance to react. And I see, Will, I was looking at you sort of turning your... I want you to sort of explain how this will work in the classroom, and especially with kids that use AI, whether you try to keep it from them or not, just your thoughts and reaction to what Rebecca's big fix is.
I have an unpopular opinion as it pertains to AI. I think that as long as we fear it and we withhold it from kids, we're going to miss it. I think we are in the same kind of stage where we were when Google came out. And everyone who was attached to the Dewey Decimal System said, you're not going to learn if you're not opening up the books in the library. And so I think the things I see within AI are actually management skills. It's the ability to have this tool and know how to best leverage. We are kind of operating in this kind of deficit understanding that kids are just logging the question in there and they're getting the answer back. We could also use this as a tool to teach kids to ask better questions. We could use it as a tool to synthesize multiple resources and pieces of information and to figure out what's true and not. And so I think as educators, we've got to somewhat outthink the particular loopholes that exist and teach kids how to leverage this.
But my only thing, and Rebecca raised a concern about, the cognitive skill, the critical thinking. Kids are not reading as many books. We've been studying that. We've talked about that on this show. And that's critical thinking. That's empathy skills. How do you make sure that doesn't get eclipsed by the focus on technology and the focus on AI?
So when we think about AI, we typically see it as I put something in, get something out. But teachers and educators also have the ability to use AI. I can create an entire excerpt written based on what the student has experienced on their way to school, and we can dig into that particular text. I think we could see AI as a tool to be much more personable, to be much more specific in how we're educating students, and to give them space to explore. Yes, we do absolutely 100% need the human-to-human interaction. But I do believe we are in a world where this thing is moving, and if we don't allow kids access and space to learn how to navigate it, to learn kind of the principles and ethics that should guide their use of it, then we're going to miss it and our students will be behind.
Yeah. I'm curious for your response to that, Rebecca. Like, there is, I think, a concern that if you really, really minimize exposure to technology, AI or otherwise, that there's just going to be a deficit that builds up.
Kids are going to be left behind. Yeah, I think it's a common. I agree. Well, I'll just tell you, we just did a big research project. It's on the Brookings website. Feel free to check it out. We did find that it can be used really effectively in some of the ways that Will talked about. Teachers can use it. If you have something very specific that you manage for kids to interact with, like the machine learning example I gave, it can be great. And kids can learn a lot from that. These are very easy tools to use. It's not like they have to learn to program. Kids will learn. The problem is the opportunity cost. You can't spend all your time in front of ChatGPT, for example, without some real in-person intermediated experience, because we are seeing evidence that kids are just not learning and they're not interacting with people, and it's much harder to control that outside of school. So I do think for kids' critical thinking, their interpersonal development, but also our civic purpose of school to develop citizens of this country that learn how to work with other people, not like themselves, we really need to try to safeguard that human-to-human interaction.
I wonder if, technology, Donna, should be even a reward, because if you can master the real work of it, then you get to have access to these tools.
Well, I think this is a really fascinating conversation, and I think the caller asked a different question than what we're discussing. Yeah. So the caller's saying, what are we teaching kids to, what are we preparing kids for? The world will look very different. And we're talking about instructional approaches. So there are very different conversations going on. And I'm really taken by the fact that I contrast what the gentleman said, which is so much of what we're preparing kids for will not exist. Against we have schools with Carnegie units and Penn faculty sending teachers into schools to watch legacy teachers as the vehicle to learn. Like, these are collision course issues that I think, would be so exciting to hear the schools of ed and the K-12 schools coming together to talk about. What does it mean to reimagine what the preparation of school is in a world in which AI has taken up so much room for content? Then you can talk about instructional practice, like how do you integrate AI in the classroom and ChatGPT or technology. I think they're secondary to the bigger question that the caller really raised and the patterns that we have.
Well, I enjoyed the human interaction this hour. I'll say that. And I want to thank Barbara, Eric, and Horace, who were on the line. We were not able to get to your calls, but thank you so much for calling. And of course, let me thank our guests, Dr. William Hayes, CEO of Boys Latin, Donna Cooper, Executive Director of Children First, and Rebecca Winthrop, Director of the Center for Universal Education. Thank you all for being here today on Studio 2.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm so mad it's over. This hour went by so fast.
Not yet. And I want to thank everybody who called in, everybody who wrote in with their ideas. And of course, thank you so much to our producers, Debbie Builder, Andreas Copes, and Hazel May Bryan. Thanks to Mike Schiffler, our visual producer, and to Al Banks and Tina Calicay, who engineered today's show. Our executive producer is Kevin McCory. Also, big thanks to WHYY Media Labs for adding those younger voices. I'm Cherry Gregg.
I'm Avi Wolfman. Don't worry, Will. We might be able to do it again someday.
I know.
Okay?
And tomorrow at noon, Studio 2 will be back with another live show. If you miss us in the meantime, you can check out our podcast feed. You can do that, Will, by the way, so you can listen back. And that's where we release Studio 2 Extras. Those are short interviews with interesting people in our region.
Yep, you can find those conversations wherever you get your podcasts. But coming up next on WHYY, as always, it's Here and Now.